Aethelred the Unready, one of the most hopeless kings in all English history, had a whole host of children. The most famous of these were two sons, who would both become kings themselves, Edmund Ironside and Edward the Confessor. Edmund's short time as king was contested by the Dane Cnut, and for 6 months in 1016 the two young men tussled for the crown, with Edmund more often than not getting the better of his rival. That was until he was betrayed at the Battle of Ashendon in October of that year, with Edmund dying not long after. Canute was now sole king of England, although there were still numerous potential rivals. Famously, these included two little boys named Edmund and Edward, the infant sons of Edmund Ironside. Whilst they may have only been little boys and completely innocent, they nonetheless politically posed a real danger to Canute, with their blood ties to the crown. They were natural figureheads for those who wished to overthrow Canute, and so, as far as Canute was concerned, they must be got rid of. Canute had these two boys sent to Sweden, where he hoped the king there would have them killed. However, the Swedish king refused, and the boys would live on in Hungary. There were more immediate threats to Canute, however. This included another of Aethelred's sons, Eadwig, brother of Ironside. Eadwig was far more dangerous for Canute, as he was a fully grown man, and would have been a more obvious candidate ahead of little Edmund and Edward to forcibly take the crown from Canute's hands. For the king, Eadwig, too, would have to be got rid of somehow. Almost immediately, Eadwig was ordered to be banished, although Canute certainly seems to have had other ideas in mind for him. Florence of Worcester gives a clue as to why Canute didn't have Eadwig killed straight away, however, when he describes Eadwig as the illustrious and most reverenced brother of King Edmund. Canute clearly felt it was vital not to alienate the English population, which the assassination of a popular prince certainly would have done. This also explains why the king was not prepared to get his hands dirty with the murders of Ironside's two little sons. But Canute was acutely aware that Eadwig's status as the brother of a former king and the son of another king, and with significant popularity, made him a very dangerous enemy indeed. On the advice of Eadric Striona, Canute sent for a man named Aethelred, who essentially Canute was hiring as a hitman, with Eadwig the prime target. Aethelred, with little option, made a promise to Canute that he would indeed execute the plot to kill Eadwig, but as it happened, Aethelred's words were a lie. He was unwilling to murder Eadwig, who was of the noblest blood in England. As this plot was being formed, was Eadwig still in exile? It seems unlikely, as, in the following year of 1017, Eadwig was outlawed by Canute, which indicates two things. Firstly, Eadwig had not only returned to England, if he had indeed been abroad at all, but was also now actively moving against Canute, although Florence of Worcester insists Eadwig was innocent of any such plots. Secondly, Canute had failed to subdue the danger that Eadwig posed to him, and would certainly have felt the situation was becoming a matter of urgency. But Canute, as he often did, found a way, and he wasn't averse to his methods being dastardly and underhanded if they produced the right result and preserved his position. Eadwig was murdered by those whom he hitherto supposed to be his best friends. Canute had infiltrated Eadwig's inner circle almost certainly by the use of bribery, and had one of the chief threats to his authority slain. Eadwig's death wasn't the only notable death in that year of 1017, and instead it was just one of a wider political cull carried out by Canute. Eadric Striona, the horrid man who had helped Canute see off Edmund Ironside, was beheaded and had his head set upon a large pole. Whilst the death of Eadric Striona would have been mourned by very few people in England at the time, Eadwig's death was another matter altogether, and would have caused more than a few ripples politically. But Cnut would come through these difficult days, and that was largely thanks to his newfound ability for inclusivity. Over time, Cnut began to lean more heavily on Englishmen in not only his governance of England, but also in establishing his vast empire, which would also include Denmark and eventually Norway as well. Englishmen played prominent roles in Cnut's campaigns, thus ensuring that any bitterness over the fates of notable men like Edmund Ironside and Eadwig were eventually forgotten, as Cnut did a surprisingly good job of ruling the country he had once plundered alongside his father.